blasting, billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
I'm Tom Bain, and this is Wine, Money, and Song. If you're interested in wines and wanting to find out the best values, please subscribe. So is there too much wine in the world right now? You would figure, how could you have too much wine? And do we have too much wine in the world? Well, the answer is we have way too much wine in the world. Why do I say that? Well, the headline here says the worst year since 1991 in the wine and alcohol business. 30 years, this is the worst year. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and I'm going to tie it to the wine market. There are a lot of reasons why. And I want to go back to Economics 101 of supply and demand. About 20 years ago, everyone was hot to trot about wine. Wine was going to be everywhere. Wine was going to be in fast food restaurants. Wine on every table, parties for this, and a lot of new countries coming online, Brazil, Uruguay, and floods of wine coming in from Argentina and Chile. And they started planting more and more grapes in those countries. Spain popularity. And in the United States, besides California planting a lot, they planted a lot in Oregon and Washington State. So think about all the recent plantings of grapes, and our demand curve was going up and up and up. But a couple of years ago, all of a sudden, it turned down, down, down. And what does that mean? That means less demand, higher supply. So that puts a pressure, it should put a pressure on pricing. And it has to a degree, but I'm going to go into all of the factors that go into the oversupply of wine and how wineries and the wine industry itself has to face this prevailing wind that's taking demand down. And I'm going to give some examples what's happening in other parts of the globe also. So let me start going around the globe, and we'll wind up back on the West Coast in America at the end of it. But just to show you how supply is outstripping demand. And when that happens, there's a pressure on prices, generally downward. But wine companies never like to lower their prices, that they've been building their image and the credibility of their wines for years to get more money. They hate lowering prices. And brands generally are very stubborn in lowering prices on their brands. But certain wines are dependent, like Bordeaux and Burgundy is dependent upon vintages. So great vintages generally get a little more money, and if it's not a good vintage, it gets less money. So that's the exception to the rule about not wanting to lower prices. And the only reason why you lower prices is that it's not selling at the higher prices. And we're going to see in the coming year, after these last two poor years, see if prices are going to come down. But let's start with the oversupply of wine first in France. In France, the last year or so, the farmers, the grape growers, have been rebelling against cheap wine coming in from other countries like Argentina, Spain, Chile. In the south of France, they've been bombing certain trucks that are coming in, tanker trucks. They're hijacking them. They're emptying out the contents of the trucks of the wine, and they're firebombing right near department stores who sell it. So it's a civil war of farmers, wine growers, who have been growing wines for decades and decades, and now with the pressure of oversupply and cheap supply coming in from abroad in France, one of the growers in Bordeaux said, it cost me $18 to make, it cost me $18 to make my wine, and it's selling in the supermarket for $12. That's not a business. That's not a business. You can't run a business like that. So they're banding together, and they're trying to stop the inflow of cheap imports that's undercutting the home market in France. And something's going to happen, and already the government is just stepping in. And there was an article from Politico, and the headline read, Bordeaux, bloodbath in French pays winemakers to dig up vines. Now, in Bordeaux, the top wines are still selling, and they're expensive, and you think, oh, well, they're selling, business is great. Classified Bordeaux is only like 3% of all the volume that Bordeaux makes. So the 97% of the other wines, a lot of them are very cheap outside of the left bank and right bank, in the Medoc. There's a lot of inexpensive wines, and red and white, and a lot of them are sold in supermarkets, and they're sold at very cheap prices, very, very cheap prices. So all of these cheaper imports are coming in and pushing them out. And the wine growers and the wine makers themselves, it's not a viable business because they're being undercut so much by the imports. So the way the French government is handling it, they're paying some of the growers in Bordeaux to rip up their vines, to grub them up, they call. And they're paying 6,000 euros per hectare for farmers to rip the grapes out and plant other crops. But this is an ongoing problem throughout the globe, and it's an oversupply problem. It's an oversupply problem with demand going down, and supply and demand have to be somewhere close in balance, or else it creates volatility in pricing. And right now, there's a lot of excess wine and a lot of excess grapes around. So from Bordeaux, let's go to the West Coast. And in California, there's a big oversupply of wines also. Now, if you go in to Costco, Trader Joe's, you see these sales. And the way Costco and Trader Joe's, they go directly to the winery. And they go around the wholesaler, paying the wholesaler 25, 30%. So they go to the winery, which is legal in California, and they buy out, let's say they have 3,000 cases of something that a winery can't sell. And it could be priced retail normally $25.99. You walk into Costco, it's $14.99. It's half the price. Now, how that works is the winery gets rid of all that wine at once. They don't have to worry about it. And it recoups maybe their costs, but that puts cash back into their pockets, and they don't have to worry about that inventory. And Costco puts it out at a good price. Trader Joe does a similar thing too. And you'll see some very cheap prices at Costco and at Trader Joe's coming up with the oversupply. And The Napa Valley wines are still selling pretty well, but the average cost for a Napa Valley Cabernet right now is around $75. So that's the top end of the market. That's the top 5% of the market in the wine market. And the last market to be hurt is the top end of the market. The market that's being hurt right now is the $12 and below, which you find in supermarkets. The wines that are growing the most are the $15 to $30 a bottle. That's a market that's the strongest. And anything that's below $12 is struggling. And the oversupply factor, let me dig out Washington State. Now, Chateau Saint Michel, which is the largest winery in Washington State, and they were one of the first to really, on a large scale, grow grapes in California and produce a lot of wines. And they buy a lot of grapes. So in July, Chateau Saint Michel, which is now owned by Antinori, the Italian Chianti producer, owns Chateau Saint Michel. They went to the growers, the grape growers, and they said, we're buying 40% less of your grapes this year. That is shocking. That is a big blow because they're such a large buyer. What's going to happen at a 40%? The other producers are not going to pick it up. And what's probably going to happen, they're either going to not harvest it, or they'll harvest it, make the wines and sell it off for industrial purposes. But that's a huge problem in Washington State. When your largest winery all of a sudden is using 40% less. And in California, you'll see a lot of new labels of the excess wines, and it'll be out there. Wineries will be buying these grapes at a very low price, and they'll make up a new label for it. So it doesn't interfere with their current one, which they're making, which is a higher price. But the 40% less is huge. And one of the direct-to-consumer sales went down last year, and it went down a lot. Now, during COVID, people bought a lot directly. So there's a chart I'm going to show you on direct-to-consumer sales. And you see during COVID, it spikes way up, but right after COVID, it goes way down. So that's an anomaly, the spike up. It's at a very, very low figure now, a really low, and that's a bad indication. And direct to consumer, let me just read off some of the numbers. In California in general, for the state of California, which is the largest market in the United States, it was down 14.4% last year. That's huge. So Napa Valley was down 4.7, Sonoma was 9.6, Central Coast 8.6, Oregon was down 9.2. And those are bad numbers. Bad indication. And part of this problem is, as I've talked before, shrinking demand is happening because of the demographics. Young people are not buying wine. And the reason why they're not buying wine is, it's 5 or 6 reasons, but I think the wine industry really has no strategy to get these younger segments back into the market. And the competition from ready-to-drink cocktails, that's up a lot. And even beer is down. And you have to understand that cannabis, too, cuts into all the alcohol also, because people think cannabis is more healthy than drinking wine. And government agencies like the World Health Organization is dead set against alcohol, even wine. They're dead set against it. And they have a big influence in Europe. And the consumption in France is way down in the last 10 years. And all that bad publicity has sort of dripped down through the years now, where young people used to drink wine because it was healthy. They thought it was healthy, the French paradox. And with that happening, they have a lot to overcome. So I want to tie this up in a nice bundle, and just a few facts.
Useless scumlapping shitbag.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Where we're going as far as wines in general. Now, the demand for wine, the whole category, is going down the last several years. And I said because of all the competition it has from the others. And nothing is stopping that. I don't expect it to keep torpedo, but it's going to be like a slow drip down. I don't see it increasing unless things are done to change it. And a big problem is the oversupply of current vintages. A lot of things are sitting around and inventories are building up. And these inventories, as they build up, there's going to be pressure to lower prices. And it's going to take time. Now, I'm not saying Chateau Lafite is going to cut their prices, but I've seen in my time first growths go down 20-30% for a while and then bounce back. But wine in general, though, because of the oversupply and the overplanting of vineyards and grapes, they have to rip out a lot of grapes to get the supply back balanced. And it's going to work out in the next few years. So we have way too much wine in the world right now. And a lot of countries want to sell their wines. And the competition is great. And to me, the wineries really have to do something as far as marketing. But I hate to be pessimistic, but those are the facts. And until the industry gets some sort of strategy, instead of my wine is better than your wine type of thing, and build up the reputation of wine in general, that is generally accepted as a part of American life, it's not going to change.